Hey, I'm Robbie Kramer. You're listening to the Leverage Podcast, where we discuss using your social skills to hack dating, travel, finding your dream job, and becoming a complete man.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We've got a really special guest on today, Joe Bernstein. He's the founder of Drop the Armor Wellness, and I'm really excited to have him on the podcast. He's a fellow weight losser or weight loser. I'm not sure how to say that exactly. Has a really cool community. You've been a coach for a very long time now, with a lot to share with us today about just men's lifestyle, men's personal growth and development. Might even get into some cool stuff about talking to women, making mistakes around women, that sort of thing. I know you also went through a brutal divorce, and I'm curious to hear a bit about that. So thanks so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful. I've been listening to your podcast recently and having fun, enjoying it. There's a lot of great content, so I just feel lucky to be able to contribute, man.
Awesome. No, I appreciate you coming on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? What's your journey basically been like?
Yeah. Okay. I'll try and give the short version. My childhood is full of plenty of beautiful, amazing things, all the things you could ask for in like a middle class, privileged, American suburban lifestyle. Except there were some challenges. My family, my parents, I don't know if they ever had the personal growth communities and the personal growth coaches or the focus on that we have grown up at this, in our age. I'm like my late 30s. So they weren't the most emotionally mature folks. And like, even though they provided a great life, there was a lot of emotional tension and drama and bickering and arguing and scarcity. So my family, we didn't get into drugs and alcohol or gambling, but we got into food and TV and just that whole lifestyle of numbing out. So I'm a guy who by the age 3 or 4 years old, I was already what doctors were calling obese. And really lived that way for most of my child life and my adult life. I learned differently, not a linear thinker. I have what they call disabilities, or what I'll call different abilities when it comes to reading. So school was always hard for me. And so you package in the two situations here. You grow up as a kid who, there's a lot more negative hate and like low esteem filled communication out there in the world back when I was growing up in the 80s and early 90s about weight and people who were fat, quote unquote. And you combine that with the fact that I'm a bit different when it comes to learning, a bit different when it comes to like how I socialize. I'm that like classic introvert that loves depth and one-on-one connection, but didn't know how to be in a group or a circle. So I grew up with a lot of limitations in my life. By the time I was 12, I was over 200 pounds and had stopped trying to diet because my parents were putting me and my sisters on diets when I was young, like really young, 6, 7, 8 years old. By the time,
the 80s, right?
What's that? Yeah.
Low fat craze of the 80s that got us all fat.
Yes.
I'm also in my late 30s, and as you were speaking, it was like, oh, that was me. Family dumbed out TV, that as a teenager. So yeah.
Yeah. And the crazy paradox is.
Right. My mom would bring home these, like, everything was fat free.
Yes.
And we'd always get that. Like,
yes. We were on like everything. We had like lean cuisine and slim fast and Atkins diet. We did like all of it, but my whole family, like I saw a picture of us when I was 12 from Niagara Falls. And we just looked like Macy's Day Parade. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on my family, but like we were big. And you're right, same thing. It was my parents were always reading about health and trying to do the right thing. Meanwhile, we were all having trouble with our health at an early age. So yeah, I'm feeling you on that. But long story short, I was in my teens already up into the high 200 and 300 pound range. I was a guy who, at school I could get by. I could listen, I could pay attention, but like when I did my best, I was getting B's. And I came from a world that said, like, if you're not great at school, if you're not a great athlete, if you're not physically attractive, you're pretty much nothing. So by the time I was 16, 17, literally believed that like love and sex and a great relationship or family wasn't going to be something I could have. I literally believed it and just thought it was who I was. I thought I would just always be obese. I thought I would keep gaining weight. I thought I'd be like struggling from health related issues, maybe even die early. I mean, I had that mindset. I thought like, yeah, I'll make it to my 40s or 50s. I swear to you, Robbie.
Yeah.
And I always thought, you know, since
That's
I'm not
pretty
the
brutal
typical,
as a, I mean, that's a brutal sort of
it
mindset as a
was.
16, 17-year-old. Like, yeah.
It was, man. And I was full of anger and depression and frustration and rage, but like I didn't even know it. I was that typical nice guy too. So I bottled it all up. I repressed it. And essentially, you know, by the time, I mean, I tried to go to college, but pretty much just smoked a hole into my brain and dropped out early. I found myself in a retail career. So I found myself working for a company that I really actually loved and I excelled at. And in my mid 20s, I met someone after spending like 5 years being involuntarily celibate. Like I didn't date anyone from like 19 to 25. I met someone. We were beautifully toxically codependent together. We got married.
Nice.
And so I found myself in my late 20s married. I was actually really successful in my first career as a store manager for a great company running multiple multi-million dollar stores. But I was a guy who just wasn't willing to take risks. I never thought I could have a great life. So everything that I had, the career, the good decent income, I mean, it was pretty good income for a guy with no college degree, a
Yeah.
marriage. I mean, we like made good income together. We traveled, we ate well. It was all more than I thought possible for myself. So I was always like holding on for dear life. You know, didn't rock the boat at work, didn't rock the boat with my ex-wife. Eventually, she came to me and had lost a bunch of connection because, well, I was being like a typical wimpy nice guy who never spoke up to her and then eventually would have some sort of rageful explosion.
Right.
So basically, come 2013, I was going through a mini health crisis. I needed a surgery for a kidney stone. I was 10, 11 years into my career and noticing I was performing really well, but starting to lose passion. I wasn't excited about like the next steps, like a district manager job just didn't thrill me.
Yeah.
And my ex came to me and said, I think I'm 1 foot out the door.
Wow.
So a life that was better than I thought I'd ever have for myself came crashing down. 2013 completely fell apart. And that was the moment where everything changed. You know, I literally was looking down the barrel of like a crossroads of, okay, I can keep going the way I've been going. And I'm going to probably be alone and be in a retail career and be in a body that probably can't even handle standing on a sales floor for 40, 50, 60 hours a week come 10 years from now.
Hmm.
Or I can try and figure out what the hell went wrong.
Yeah.
And that was that moment. Like I literally thought, hell, I've gotten more than I thought I could have in this life and I've lost it all. Mine might be a moment to take responsibility for myself. So, you know, I was lucky. Our therapist that we worked with at the time, she gave us the 5 love languages. And then I found Dr. Glover's Know or Mr. Nice Guy. And like I became insatiable to learn, which led
Yeah.
me to like group coaching programs and online courses and eventually men's transformational weekends. I'd caught the bug, you know, from 2012 to 2013, that summer, I'd lost over 100 pounds. I went from being a guy who was kind of helpless in a marriage that wasn't fulfilling sexually. We didn't get along that well. We fought all the time, to a guy who was like dating multiple women that I thought were like way out of my league. My social
Hmm.
skills were expanding. And you know what? And I just basically said, look, this is like got to be some sort of divine intervention. There's no way I can go through all these changes just by learning skills that no one teaches us when we're growing up.
Yeah.
And I thought I had to figure out a way to help others. Now there's plenty more story here, but that was it. That was like launching the seed of I have to become a coach for other men. I have to help them change in the ways that I've changed.
Sure.
And that was probably 7 years ago now, and I've just been trucking ever since, figuring out how to create the business and loving the work I do with helping clients. So that's like the short part of my story. The bottom line is I was a guy who didn't think he could have much, so he held on for dear life to anything he could have, compromised himself, didn't really believe that I could go after what I want, and lost it all. So then I decided there's only one fucking way to live, which is to be
Hmm.
bold, to be courageous, to dream big, and to run after it full steam ahead and to continue to learn and grow in the process, you know? So I'll stop
Yeah.
there for now so you can jump
No,
in
it's
and everything.
it's a super inspiring story. It's almost like you're like the poster boy for transformation. It's like in a weird way.
Uh,
No, no, like that maybe came out a little bit strange, but like just having things going from so bad to being able to make that turnaround. And also it seems like you were at a point where you were kind of just doing like the cliche American life, you know, just kind of just like asleep at the wheel. And you needed that major, you know, boulder coming crashing down
Yep.
to be like, whoa, what's going on here? And then going through all of that transformational experience and doing all the different things you did. I had a similar experience, but over a much longer period of time. And I don't think I hit any lows as hard as
Hmm.
you did, or maybe I did at different points. But
Right.
I heard a lot of similarities in our journey because I was overweight. I lost 50 pounds at one point. Total, you know, nice guy. A ton of, you know, codependent, toxic relationships. Like everything you described, I was like, oh,
Yep.
did that, did that. Except yours was in like it all. You had this very, you
Yeah.
know, intense period there where it came, you know, where you got into it. How were you able to? So many people, I think, in that situation, you know, they become worse, or they turn to
Hmm.
drugs or alcohol, or who knows what. um, so I'm curious, how were you able to, you know, kind of pick yourself back up and get into the personal growth community?
Right. Right. You know, that's the thing is I learned what I valued in that experience.
Hmm.
So I learned that I didn't want to necessarily have an easy relationship. Like I have parents that are still together, like in their 70s. They went
Right.
through all kinds of levels and layers of challenge and strife and love and excitement, and they have a great family. And me and my sisters have great families now. So I've seen a model for, I don't think relationships need to be easy, but I'm unwilling to have them full of drama and toxic codependency and
Yeah.
constant arguing and bickering. So I saw that there was a version of like I'm a relationship guy. And luckily there's a lot of really great books and trainings and information out there about relationship, you know. There's so much out there, anything from like what Gay Hendricks is doing to Esther Perel, what she's doing. And so I learned that I valued relationship. I valued love even more than I thought, and that I could learn. I learned that I value learning. But see, the world didn't teach me that because
Yeah.
I thought I was a bad student, right? Like I'm not a good student. I can't read a bunch of textbooks. I actually probably never read a book, like a full book in high school.
Yeah.
Swear to God, I didn't
I think
really
I'm in
start
the same boat.
reading.
I was really good at
Yeah,
the clip. Yeah.
right. The Cliff
But yeah.
Notes and like this is even before the internet. Guys who are like in their 20s who are listening, like this is before the
Yeah.
internet. Like Robbie and I
Cliff
figured
notes.
out how to like buy Cliff Notes and like ask our smart friends. And yeah. So basically I learned that I'm actually an extraordinary learner. I looked back on my
Yeah.
career. My career, I excelled, and it was all experiential learning. It was sales, it was demonstration, it was leadership, it was coaching, it was training people. And so I realized, wait a second, I actually love learning and I feel lit up when I'm learning. Even as me and my ex wife were falling apart before she decided to leave me, I remember getting that love languages book, you know, Gary Chapman, for anyone who hasn't read it, and
Yeah.
turning to her like every chapter going like, this is amazing. Like, can you believe this? And I'm all excited. And she's like rolling her eyes because she's already kind of probably committed to leave at this point in her own
Right.
heart. But I got really excited to learn. And that passion to learn became more important than dwelling on the past and then focusing on what I lost. And if I'm being honest, we all have different responses to trauma.
Hmm.
And being told by the person you think is going to love you forever that she's done, that's a major trauma.
Yeah.
You know, my response to that trauma was, I'm going to figure it out. Something I teach my clients first session when I work with them is you're no longer allowed to be a student. You actually have to be the scientist. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning, but you
Yeah.
have to turn into someone who's willing to not only learn, but who's fascinated about experimenting. And
Yeah.
that's
I
what
love
really
that.
did it for me, right? I took the passion for learning into experimenting. I
Right.
actually had a dating coach. I was in his program with like 400 dudes at the time who he said right away, it's like step one, the guys who implement what they learn within 48 hours will be smothered in women. It's like
Uh,
this was it. And so I literally took that principle and I ran with it. with everything I did. So that was it. Part of my trauma response was, I'm going to be the scientist. I'm going to figure out what went wrong. I'm going to give myself a chance. I don't know what'll work and what won't, but I got fascinated with trying. And there was drugs and alcohol, and I started drinking when I like didn't really drink in my 20s, and I had a couple of years where I drank a little more, like partying and stuff. But at the end of the day, it was also really about giving myself a chance to create
Mhm.
a life. When, like you said, I was asleep at the wheel for all my life. I just consumed what the world had taught me. These are your
Right.
values. These are what's important. This is what you have to do to keep a relationship. You know, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. This is what you have to do to keep a job. This is how you have to wear your hair. You can't let your beard grow too long, all that shit, right? So I consumed the beliefs around me and I went to sleep at a very early age.
Right.
And then ultimately I learned that didn't work. So I'm going to go out and create. And creation has been like a passion for me since, is creating a life rather than consuming what the world told me my life should be. And so yeah, it was all in service to that. It was all in service to creating something from what felt like ground zero. It felt like nothing at 31 years old, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because they talk about the kind of the three pillars of, you have your health, you have wealth, and you have relationships. And
Yep.
when one of those things is kind of out of whack, you experience some major, kind of problems in life. And
Right.
it sounds like all three of those for you were pretty, you know, rock bottom, or at least just not in a workable condition.
Right.
Um, and when I went through my weight loss period, um, I lost like 60 pounds in 100
Hmm.
days, but my business suffered because I was basically just, focused on eating healthy and working out.
Hmm.
And my relationship suffered a little bit too. I was in a, normal committed relationship at the time, but it was, I don't know, I just kind of checked out a bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious how you were you able to kind of balance those things? Because I'm sure a lot of guys listening might have a couple areas, or at least one area that's a little bit out of whack. So if you
Right.
have any, you know,
Right. Well,
suggestions on, yeah.
that's a good question. I don't think that we need to be as balanced as people say we should be. Now,
Uh-huh.
overall balance, but there's going to be periods of time in life where I'm heavily focused on one thing rather than the other.
Yeah.
And that's okay, as long as I'm integrating what I learn and I'm learning new skills and new habits that I can then take to the next point in life when I pivot and I focus on something else. So when I was going through what I was going through, I actually, career, I had this wake up call that like this career that I had with a company that I really loved, which I was doing well at, there was going to be something after it. But I was already in a position where I was a store manager. There was a lot of pressure, there's a lot of work, but I was creating my own schedule at the time. And I really let career not be that important for like a good year. I
Yeah.
did what I had to do. I showed up and I performed. I was good at the job already. I mean, I'd been doing the job of a store manager for that company for 5 years already. And so I literally did do, if I'm being honest about that time, we were expected to at least work 40 hours a week, if not like 45, 50. Probably snuck out a little bit here and there to go to the gym early. I probably snuck out a little bit here and there to go and get ready to go out for the evening to like learn new social skills that I've been learning in all these books and programs. So I deprioritized career because I did at least have stable income at that time. And it
Yeah.
was a job I knew I wasn't excited about to go into the future with, but I knew
Mhm.
I could do. And so I spent all my energy at that time working on my confidence and my communication skills with women and in social life. And I spent a lot of time working on my body. And so I would get up and, I would food prep for like 3 hours on Sunday. Actually, I still do that shit. But like, I food prep for hours. I was learning to cook. I was
Yeah.
learning to really take care of myself. I would, wake up and go to the gym if I was working an afternoon shift, and I would hit the gym hard and I would do all my meditation and everything. If I was working a morning shift, I'd do like a strength training circuit at home. I would go for a 2 mile run and then I'd go to the gym like at night at 9 o'clock. So I was really focused on my body and changing my nervous system because I'm naturally a very anxious dude.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was an anxious dude. I didn't know I was a fear based dude until I started doing more research on how to really understand the nervous system, to understand why I was so anxious and shy and weird with like women and socially. And then when I learned about the nervous system, I got really focused on creating a healthy environment for my nervous system to heal, and then creating a lot of positive mental feedback loops. So I believe we can focus on like two of those pillars hardcore at once. But with a lot of my
Yeah.
clients, I move around with them in pockets. If we're working together for 6 months or a year, I'm like, cool, first month or two, we're going to focus on X, get you up and running on that. We're not going to focus on the other parts of life that you want help with. So I'm big into compartmentalize and focus on something that you really want to dig into to learn and change. And then do it in ways where you're going to take sustainable skills with you. So when you pivot and go in the other direction, you're good. Like, so when I decided about 2 years after that to leave retail career and start my coaching business, I was still taking care of my body, but I was a lot less focused. I
Yeah.
was in a relationship at that point, which I really enjoyed. So I wasn't that focused on like going out and dating a bunch and learning new social skills. I was kind of in a groove with body and love. So I worked as
Right.
on career. Eventually, that relationship wasn't the one that I thought would be my life partner. So I took a period of time where once my coaching practice was off the ground, we had separated and I focused hard on doing deeper work on my body, on spirituality, on my beliefs around love, and going out and dating again. And now I've found the partner that like I live with. We're purchasing a mountain home together. Like this is the life partner. So I actually
Yeah.
believe that we don't have to balance it all at once. We can create one piece after another. When you're building a house, they're not building the roof as they're building the foundation, you know?
Yeah, no, that's very well said. And I'm really curious about what you said about anxiety,
Yeah.
some of the nervous system stuff. I could relate a lot to that. And I have a lot of clients that could relate a lot to that. Um,
Yeah.
I just thought it was because I'm just an anxious Jew, just run through the blood. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, man. Me too. Me too.
Figured
Bernstein,
Bernstein, there's a pretty good chance you're Jewish as well.
Got
Maybe
it.
it's but yeah, that was a similar sort of realization I had was like, why am I anxious all the time? I didn't realize I was anxious all the time.
Yeah.
But once I figured it out, I'm like, Jesus, yeah, like this is not a really great way to live. So I'm curious how you were able to, make some strides in that
Yeah.
department.
Yeah. Good question. I realized that, I used to call myself a realist.
Hmm.
And that was really just a very nice window dressing for being a pessimistic, fear based person that always operated off of the deepest shame response, which for me is I can't. A lot of people, their shame response is like, I'm not good enough, no one loves me, whatever. Mine is just, I can't. I can't do this. I can't do that. There's 1,000 reasons why this won't work or that won't work. There's 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't go talk to that woman. There's 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't try out that thing in bed and risk like pissing her off, whatever. There's 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't go, like put out some new content that's really edgy for my current business. So what I learned was that was just it was a learned behavior and a learned pattern in my mind. But I also learned that my body contains a lot of anxiety. I'm a guy, and I bet maybe you can relate, but I'm sure a lot of your listeners can, or maybe clients can. I had been taught, like I think a lot of men, especially in Western cultures, to live from the chin up. I've been taught
Yeah.
that if you're not an athlete or a freaking model, that basically your value is just in your brain. Your value is how smart you are, how well you can think, at like how good are you at math and sciences and things of that nature. And so essentially, I had to learn deeply to honor my body. Losing weight just wasn't just eating chicken breast, broccoli, and going to the gym. Losing weight for me was a real dive into my beliefs and my nervous system and mind body connection and almost some of the spiritual elements of what it takes to make transformation work was a big part of that. You know, I really personally learned that the nervous system is something that we can't really control, but we have a lot of influence over. So of course, like everyone, I started meditating. I started doing guided visualizations for like relaxing before going out to like, socialize or going out on dates. I started getting into a bit of, Eastern spirituality to gain some new insights and new belief systems. But ultimately, I had to create a connection with my body where I could feel nervous energy, I could feel anxiety. And I learned all these little tricks and tips. Like for 30 plus years, 30 years of my life, I was a nail biter, you know?
Mm.
And so I learned that essentially that's just an excess abundance of physical energy from my nervous system. So I had to learn, okay, what can I do when I'm like, at a bar, I'm feeling this like anxiousness in my hands. Like, what can I do with it? I learned little tricks and tips to like literally, imagine energy moving out of the hands and out into the atmosphere around you and like surrounding you as like a cloud of positive energy. I also learned a lot to work with the thoughts. So I do still to this day a lot of affirmational work, just tons of
Mm.
affirmational work to manage my thoughts so that I'm not always fueled with these fear-based thoughts. And really, there was just a lot that I had to learn about using exercise to express my energy. And I didn't exercise much at all. So I was, of course, always an anxious mess. A lot of people who are anxious, actually, I'm learning more and more, just have an abundance of nervous system energy. And we have to learn how to channel that into creativity, into exercise, into difficult things other people aren't willing to do,
Yeah.
into creating what we want, whether it's art or music or a business. So there's just a lot to understand. And little tip for anyone who's been going through this, I'm always at a point where I think I've managed my anxiety and I've managed my nervous system. I've figured it all out. That's always when some new challenge or transitional phase comes up in life, and I realize, nope, this is here with you forever, Joe. It's just something that you can't run from. You have to learn to be better and better with uncertainty all the time. You have to learn how to handle the feelings of anxiety and stress when you aren't in a position. Like, I had a hip injury last year, and I couldn't go run. I couldn't lift. I couldn't even do my yoga for like a month and a half. I had to learn to like manage the person that I am with anxiety without being able to use the body to move through it. So I think that's
Mm.
part of it, is just to study a little bit about what anxiety really is, to understand some basics of the nervous system. Of course, no surprise, probably been 100 times in your podcast, lots of breath work, lots of understanding to use the breath to actually calm the nervous system. For anyone who's never heard it before,
Actually, no one's spoken about that on the podcast though.
no one's spoken about this ever. Okay.
I don't
So
think so.
all right. So I have a training. I don't focus on weight loss at all, but I have a
Yeah.
coaching certification in mind body nutrition and eating psychology. And a lot of what I learned was about how the nervous system and our metabolic functions are related to our actual parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system dominance. So, we'll just call it stress and relaxation response. So I learned that literally 60 to 90 seconds of deep belly breathing can physiologically change your nervous system from fight or flight to a relaxation response. And
Mm.
I used that tons. I mean, all the time I would do it. Like I said, I'd kind of leave work early. Back when I was learning how to date for the first time, I'd leave work early. I'd go take a run. I'd shower off. I'd do like a visualization laying in bed to relax. And then I'd like drive to go meet a woman. And then I'd sit in my car and I would literally do like a 2-minute breath work exercise and then run some affirmations in the mirror and I'd run out.
Yeah.
And so doing that breath work, whether it be maybe you need to excuse yourself for a minute, it's a business meeting, it's a date, go to the bathroom, take a few breaths. Do you
Yeah.
notice yourself getting in your head or starting to worry? Literally, you could sit at a table across from someone and focus on breathing into your core, into like, into your abdomen or even into like your balls. So some dating coach is like, imagine breathing into your balls. And I kind of love
Right.
that shit. So I
Yeah.
would imagine taking the breath and really bring it down and using it. Of course, all meditation and yoga teachers and such, which I've done plenty of in my life, do talk about the breath and how to utilize it. Same thing, Wim Hof. It's like the opposite end of the spectrum. He's like the
Right.
opposite of some like, you know, 27-year-old, 105-pound yoga teacher. He's like the opposite, but him, same thing. It's all about breath work and using breath to understand that it can actually take our nervous system from crazy, insane, anxious fight or flight to relax, cool, calm, collected. I do it all the time. I should probably slow myself down right now because I'm getting excited and start to talk really fast, and I could feel my energy
You
start
don't
to
seem
rise.
like
See
it.
that?
You seem,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, Joe is so cool, and
Oh,
just
thanks, man.
you don't come across, but it's funny how we're so aware of those,
Yeah.
micro things going on for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's great because I'd heard many people speak about breath work and of course Wim Hof, but I like how
Mm-hmm.
that's such an applicable thing you can do in any situation. You're feeling a little out of whack, just take a breather, go to the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
take deep breaths, and something I have to remind myself to do more often. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
use that for sure. Tell me a little bit more about your about how you got back into dating after your
Mm-hmm.
divorce.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned to me offline that like your divorce was actually a really positive, amazing thing, transformational experience.
Yeah.
Uh, and to because not only do you have to get back out there, did you have any sort of emotions you needed to move through in terms of like anger or just bad shit around that
Yeah.
situation?
Totally. I had a lot of anger, and if I'm being honest, it was mostly at myself. I woke up to the fact that there was no reason why I had to treat myself like someone who was unlovable and unattractive for most of my life. And there was no reason that I had to commit. Like I literally committed to a woman that maybe 3 dates in, I said to myself, like, this isn't right. There's something off here. Our values aren't lined up. Her behavior is a little iffy, right? But I was
Yeah.
so afraid of being alone because I'd literally been alone for years and I always assumed I'd be alone that I latched on for dear life. So after it was all said and done, I really didn't blame her. I mean, as soon as you go through these stages of grief, as they say, and I went through them very rapidly. I mean, I went through in a matter of days, I went through these stages of grief. And I remember, and I can't teach anyone how to do that. It just happened automatically for me. I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse because I probably still have
Yeah.
stuff to work through from those days. But but essentially, I remember getting to that acceptance point, and as soon as I accepted, like this is actually happening, she's moving on, I'm gonna have to figure my life out. There was actually almost only frustration with myself. I
Hmm.
really had to find out, and that's where that anxious brain actually works well, because instead of being stuck in this place of being angry with myself, I said, like, I got to figure it out. A
Yeah.
lot of my clients are that. They're like, I got to figure it out. I got to know. I got to have the information. And then that's why I talk about like information is not transformation. We got to take this student and turn him into a scientist. But but essentially that was it. I had a lot of anger at myself. I couldn't believe that I'd let myself get into that relationship. And I couldn't believe that I was holding on for dear life. I would have done anything to save that relationship. But as soon as the acceptance stage hit, I realized, oh gosh, we were a mess. I wasn't happy. I was lying to myself all the time. I was compromising my values. We were getting into a pretty bad situation financially as well. And I'm a squirrel. You give me cash, like I'm going to find a way to store it away and stock it away. She was the opposite. We had like one line of credit together. It was 11 grand in the hole. We paid it off. It wasn't back into the hole. So I was really frustrated with myself for giving in and giving up so much just to be loved. And so from that point, there wasn't really a tremendous amount of grief or anger. It was a matter of learning, how do I get recommitted to my values? And how do I learn to build a sense of inner validation and inner worthiness? So that if I have a vision for my life, which I did at that point, I got excited and thought I can make anything happen, that I can stick to it no matter what in the future. When a woman comes along that I'm really into, but there's something out of alignment, I can be grounded and rooted in what's important to me. And I can be grounded and rooted in knowing that I'm important, that I'm valuable, that I'm lovable. And then the other thing that really helped was, to me, it became about skills. And I thought to myself, well, my whole life, I didn't practice dating much. I didn't practice in the bedroom much. I didn't give myself a lot of choices and chances. So I looked at it as like, there's all these skills to learn and try. And I really just focused there. I focused on skills and I focused on deepening into what I call emotional fluency. I had emotional intelligence. Like, when I would get my 360 review, my yearly review at work, it put me up there. Emotional intelligence. Yep, Joe's got it. He's there. But I didn't really understand my own emotions. And so, really understanding how to feel and like know the message behind my emotions was a vital part in my growth, in my healing. Reconstructing, told you, the guy who believed I shouldn't have love, I shouldn't have a family, I'm not attractive, I'll never make much money. Constructing beliefs that like that's all bullshit. And if anyone can do it, so can I. So there was just a lot of deep work on reconstructing beliefs, understanding my emotions, connecting with, a vision that I had, connecting with values, still the stuff that I help people with today.
Hmm. And when you were going through that process, that was a bunch of different modalities, different trainings. It's kind of everything in a pot
Yeah.
at once, sounds like.
Yeah, it was. It was all kinds of different work, yeah, you could think of everything. I had a schedule actually. 2013, 2014, I had a personal growth schedule. Like I had my work schedule, I had my workout schedule, I had my dating and socializing schedule, but I literally made sure I booked 3 nights a week with myself to focus on different programs I was in.
Yeah.
So, it's like
Great.
Tuesdays, the dating
Yeah.
coach thing, and Thursdays I watch all the videos for like the fitness coach program I bought. And then that way I can apply them all week. And then, you know, Sunday afternoon is when I plan my week and plan out like which practices from these different programs am I going to do before work,
Yeah.
after work. I really just dug into like dozens of different modalities and trainings. I probably read 70 books that year, and I continue to work and on myself like that. I've slowed down a good bit so I could just integrate and live life, but it was a
Right.
ton of different work.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience from what it sounds like in terms of just, once I need to figure something out, like I will just go absolutely crazy. Maybe it's that anxiety like you mentioned, but I will just become like a mule and
Yep.
work on this thing until I solve the problem. And it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like I'm
Yep.
learning. Um,
Hmm.
and and I think I've had probably a similar response to what it sounds like from, when something bad happens. I guess I've maybe through all the training I've done, whatever, I'm done a pretty good job of being like, all right, how am I at the source of this? How can this, how can we change it?
Yep.
How can I educate myself on how to not get back there and how to move forward versus like, for me, I'm a victim, I'm this, I'm that,
Yep.
which I think a lot of people get, obviously caught up in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And it sounds like, so the first thing you did was what, the getting and losing all the weight. That was like the first phase.
Part of it. It was actually a little bit of everything. So what had happened was I had lost a bunch of weight already while I was married.
Okay.
She was really into the environment. She was really into cooking, very foodie. We'd go to like nice restaurants. So actually, just by learning how to cook a little bit, just basics, and by committing to lots of like local foods and natural foods, to switch from like Ben and Jerry's and McDonald's and Chinese to cooking my own pork chops, and I was curing my own bacon before I went vegan for several years, which is a whole nother podcast if you want. But
Yes.
I was eating really well. So I'd already lost about 40 pounds. When her and I really started,
But quick question. You're no
yeah.
longer vegan, but you went for a little bit,
Oh yeah, for years actually. I went vegan for years. That was part of
but
the
now
weight
not.
loss. Yeah, no, not anymore. Um,
That should be a podcast, actually. I'm really curious.
I
But anyways,
right, I did this whole thing where I was like a straight up junk food addict, and then I became more of like a carnivore where I just ate tons of meat.
yeah,
And I lost weight eating tons of meat, just learning to go from fast food and bullshit and frozen food to whole natural foods. So I lost about 40 or 50 pounds by the time we split. So I already had evidence that like I could keep going.
yeah,
And what happened was I signed up for a gym. It was like the cliche thing. It was like, all right, just got dumped. What do? You sign up for a gym, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing that was amazing was I all of a sudden had this belief in myself, like, I'm going to turn this ship around. And so I really committed to going to the gym all the time. Now, what then happened, it was all parallel. It happened a lot at the same time. I'd continued working with a therapist because for the first 6 months after that idea that we're going to get separated, I had some work to do there. And I kept reading more and more books and like kind of just diving into my own mind and my own body. Going to the gym that much or going on runs that often gave me tons of time to listen to audio programs from coaches, to listen to podcasts, to listen to books, obviously audiobooks. So believe it or not, the fitness like obsession that came up gave me the channel, or if you will, the platform to do a lot of learning because I'm not a big read. I mean, I can sit down and I read, and I'll read. I've probably read a few hundred books since 2013 at this point, but I'm still an audio guy. I'm still a kinesthetic and
Same.
experiential guy.
I hate
Or I
reading.
don't.
I don't mind, but just popping my headphones in and listening to stuff
Yeah.
while I'm doing, taking a walk, walking the dog, on the treadmill, going
Yep.
for a hike, like doing those things together. I feel like I get so
Yeah.
immersed in the experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm totally on the same page.
So that was it. I mean, it gave me the opportunity to do all of it, to do the learning about, human beings, about relationship, about dating, about health, about confidence while I was taking care of my body. And that gives me let me throw a little tip at the audience too.
Yeah.
That's an example of habit stacking. You've probably heard it before, but I'm
Yeah.
huge on habit stacking. Watch that video from the training program you bought while you're doing your Sunday night food prep. Listen
Mm-hmm.
to that book about confidence with women while you're, lifting weights, hitting the gym. Do multiple things at once. Take your learning and integrate it into another activity that's for your well-being. It's for your benefit. Like you said, take a hike in nature, and that way you're getting the healing from nature. You're getting the alone time, which is like a second thing, and you're listening to something that you're learning, which is like a third thing. So try and integrate and do these things together. That really does a couple things. A, you're maximizing your time, but B, I don't have the science to prove this. I'm a huge believer in allowing the subconscious and allowing the body to absorb content, to also be part of the learning process.
Right.
So as we're learning new concepts and new information that flip our paradigm in life, and I'm also working on the body, or I'm taking a run, or like you said, walking the dog, you're literally integrating that knowledge into the muscle, into the tissue, and maybe even a deeper place, your subconscious, your spirit, etc. So yeah, a whole lot of that stuff, man. A whole lot of that going on. So it was all really congruent. I was working on everything at once: dating, the nervous system, confidence, weight loss, all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said about habit stacking. I'm a huge like habit Nazi or whatever you want to call it. Like,
Yeah.
like I was in a place um, kind of around like mid 2018 where I had just been in the most ridiculous like years of partying. Um, and it was a lot of fun. Obviously, the dating aspect of it was insane. But I had essentially let all of my habits go in terms of weight loss or fitness, you know, healthy eating, career stuff. And I remember I picked up a copy of Atomic Habits, James Clear,
Nice.
and it wasn't like love the book, amazing, and it was so simple. Just like, dude, all this stuff. What's wrong with you? How did you allow yourself to get so out of whack? But then just kind of setting up consistent habits, stacking those habits, and just getting really back to basics. I was able to really turn that around very quickly. Is that something you work a lot with your clients in terms of getting habits going? And because that for me
Yes.
that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. I get guys that want the trifecta. Like I really do. I get a lot of guys in their like late 20s to mid 30s. Every once in a while, I'm working with a guy in like his early 40s. But for the most part, I get a lot of guys, and I jokingly call it like the Jesus age. Where like It's literally like this, like it literally is the time of enlightenment in many ways for young men. And I think a lot of us are going through, like millennials, exennials, if you will, are going through what you might call quote unquote midlife crisis a lot earlier. The
Yeah.
information that we have at our fingertips and the proliferation of different types of ways that we can work and the worldview that we now have, where we get to see like this one American way, this classic kind of hands off the wheel, asleep at the wheel life. It's not the only thing. Men are going through pretty early. So a lot of the time they want to have some difference in the way they treat their body. Maybe it's food habits, maybe it's exercise habits. They want to have some deeper sense of freedom or groundedness or confidence in love and relationship. Now, maybe they're already married and it's about finding more time to rekindle and reconnect, or not hiding all of their, their emotions and learning to be vulnerable with their partner. Maybe it's that they're just broke up and so they're like preparing themselves to go out and date again. But they always want something in regards to health, to love life, and to career. Maybe they just want to feel less stress around their career. Or maybe like my one client this morning, he literally left a job at Google, no joke, and worked, waited tables for a couple of years because he found that more intellectually stimulating than working at Google. And now he's training to be a plant medicine shaman, a dating coach, and start intentional community. So maybe it's someone who wants to go on that kind of adventurous life where he's creating out of all of his passions and aligning his income with it. But they always want all three. And you'd be amazed at how the work we do doesn't have to be profound to create profound impacts. So I often am breaking it down to little habits and little experiments. The dude I just mentioned, he's literally flying to Brazil with his girlfriend this week. She's from Brazil. They're gonna spend 6 months living there, and so he's gonna decide like, do I want to live there? Do I want to come back to the U.S.? But essentially, this week I literally have him doing two things. He's doing a compassion journal, because even though he's done all this spiritual work and preparing to be a shaman and all this personal growth work, he's still got that, like, his granddad and his dad are both lawyers, and he's still got that like hammer at home, work harder, never give yourself slack. He's still got this lack of compassion. And I've told him, you and I both know, you're not going to go create this life that you're dreaming of if you don't learn how to have self-compassion. So I have him doing a compassion journal. Another guy, literally, I'm going, all right, you know what? It's time to just get back to the gym. It's the whole, I think it's in Atomic Habits, either that or maybe it's in Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, where it talks about make it okay to literally just show up at that gym 3 times a week. I don't care what you do. I don't care how long you're there. If you step foot in the door, that's the win. So we're often doing these deep dives where you're doing an experiment around consciousness, like self-compassion journaling, or something simple, like a simple habit. Another guy, environment is one of his values. And he's been staring at this Sonos speaker that sits 2 feet from his head on his bed for the last few months, thinking I should move this to another room, simply because he doesn't like, the Wi-Fi interference and what it could potentially be doing to his brain. So simple things like that, dude, go move it and get over all the resistance and all the stories about, oh, it's annoying and you got to reprogram it. You got to go into the app. Just do it. And then sit down and every day for the next week, put a little notebook near your nightstand, write down, I'm not putting Wi-Fi into my brain anymore. So it's a lot of these simple little teeny habits that we're working on all the time, that when you stack enough of them, if you like integrate a new one each week, a tiny change each week, like, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line, a bunch is different, both in habits, but in how you look at yourself too. So you got it. That's totally it. Lots of little experiments, little habits all the time, man.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It's like compound interest when it comes to money. You just a little investment all the time, consistent. Before you know it, you've got a whole sort of situation.
That's right. Yeah. It's a guy's Hardy, right? Wrote the book Compound Effect. Is his last name Hardy?
Yeah. I think I read that one.
Dan Hardy or Dave Hardy or something. Yeah. That one was huge in like the dating coaching stuff, like what, 6, 7, 8 years ago. That was a huge book around that time.
The Compound Effect, or which one?
Compound Effect, yeah.
Yeah. I just read one that was pretty cool. I think it's called, pull it up right here, The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. it's kind of like an inner game related money book, investing book. So it's not like do this, do that. It's this is how to think about it. If you want to have 100K in your checking account because that makes you feel comfortable, that's okay. Some people are going to feel like, you're missing out on all this potential capital you could be making by investing, but each
Right.
their own. So that was cool. And a very similar sort of thought process with habit stacking and that sort of thing. So how do you tell us more about how guys can find you, how you typically work with clients? You know, I'm really curious because it sounds like you've got a bunch of like interesting guys from all different walks of life.
Yeah, I get really blessed with a lot of really interesting guys like you, like me. They tend to be, a little bit anxious, a little bit heady. They're big thinkers. They love to learn. Very often they're like personal growth junkies as well, but they're sitting here going like, all right, well, I went to therapy and I went to the, meditation retreat and I go to my men's group and I've read 100 books, but like, how come I'm not like getting laid more? And how come I'm still in this shitty job I hate? So, so really it's for me, I'm helping a lot of guys in that range of that late 20s to mid 30s, just take action, integrate the habits. What I really work on, what I call it is building a life that's lit the fuck up, instead of having that, you know, hands off the wheel, asleep at the wheel type of life. It's being about being fired up and passionate. And so the way that guys work with me is one-on-one typically. Every once in a while I'll do a group, but those kind of come and go. It's like when I have enough guys who are kind of in the work with me, and then we'll transition, and I'll bring a few guys from one-on-one to group, and then I'll add a few other guys who've been kind of hanging out. But mostly I work one-on-one with people. I work with them in long-term, work, about 6 to 12 months typically. And we're working on creating that balance of the trifecta, like you said, health, career, love life. But to me, it's really not about that. It's about getting clarity of your head, getting openness in your heart, and then really having solid guts. Because I tell people every day, I have a Facebook group I want to invite people to called Drop the Armor Dojo, where it's literally a bunch of people who are committed to building a lit the fuck up life, who are committed to making 3 choices every day: love over fear, courage over comfort, creation over consumption. So what I'd recommend for people is, if you do really want that lit the fuck up life, that it's simply a matter of daily practicing those 3 choices. So I'd love for people they could email me, joe@dropthearmor.com, spelled the American way, ARMOR. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. But really, if you want to get daily engagement with both men and women, it's not just a men's Facebook group, because I kind of dislike men's Facebook groups. They're not my favorite. I love to have a fuller community where it's more balanced. I could see the smile on your face there. There's some knowing in that.
I shut it down recently, so
there's a lot of like hyper masculine BS going on in those that doesn't really fit the way I work with people and my beliefs. So I've created a Facebook group. Check it out. It's called Drop the Armor Dojo. I drop mini trainings in there twice a week. We also do some sort of daily engagement, pop a question in there and people challenge each other with how to answer it. And really, it's really deep stuff. It's stuff I wouldn't put on my profile. So those are the ways to find me. Email me or jump onto Facebook and join Drop the Armor Dojo and have some fun with us in there. It's a lot of badass people doing great things in life, learning together, growing together,
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And definitely guys check that out. Joe, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been really cool because I feel like I can talk to you forever. We have so much in common. But also, you have the best beard of any guest who's ever been on, and there's been some good beards. So,
is there? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Robbie, it's funny. Thank you for having me. I'm actually like criticizing my beard today. It's like gotten too curly on the sides. So like I'm brushing it all day long. I'm like, I'm going to be on video 3 or 4 times today. So thank you for honoring it. That's a great example of how sometimes, we just don't see ourselves the way others do. So thanks for
it's
in the beard,
awesome.
man.
We got the gray spot here. It's like so unique. So
I got beard metaphors for days. I do Facebook videos about building like a relationship between building a great beard and building a great business and building a great love life. Like there's so many beard metaphors.
It's not easy. not
Yeah.
easy.
It's not easy.
I've
It's
never,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Well, cool, man. Thanks so much for coming on, and hope you guys enjoyed watching.
Thanks for listening. If you want more, go to innerconfidence.com and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for the latest episodes.